My guest for this episode is Fiona Pagett. We met several years ago in an entrepreneurial community and have been friends ever since. And I've always been impressed by how quickly she takes control of her career path to adapt to changing circumstances. People kind of get set in their ways sometimes, but not Fiona. She's never stood still. She's not afraid to dive in and pursue an entirely different career path. This is Invincible Career, and I'm Larry Cornett. Welcome to the show, Fiona. It's good to see you. It's been a little while.
Thank you.
So let's start with learning a little bit more about who you are, where you are, because people are going to say, cool accent. She must be somewhere outside of the U.S., which is true. A little bit about your career path, because I think you've had a fascinating career path and the things that you've been doing, because we've known each other for years and I've been able to watch it through Facebook and other places. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I am from Scotland in the Scottish Borders. That's just south of Edinburgh. I've lived here for 21 years with my, well, should I say children? Yes, they're always children.
That's right.
Angus 23 and Katie's 20, so they're older children.
Yeah.
And my dogs and my chickens, and I love sort of country life. So my career, has been pretty varied. I started off in broadcast journalism. I started off actually in the radio, working in the radio up in Aberdeen, and sort of very quickly got myself in front of the microphone. I don't know how. at that point, was flying around in a helicopter in the morning doing the travel reports, which was great.
That's
fun.
pretty cool.
And
That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
it was pretty cool. And then I had my own music show. They taught me how to do all of that kind of thing, and I moved over to television and read the news bulletins and did that sort of thing. Then moved to Glasgow, where I presented a program. It was a sort of current affairs type program for 5 years, which really gave me a huge amount of life experience in it. Because although I was quite young, the subjects I was covering were extremely diverse, and at times people laugh when I say I've been in every Scottish prison for the right reasons.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
you were able to walk back out.
I was. So yeah, that was, it was a fantastic job. I loved it. I was filming out in Israel, got caught up in shootings in Bethlehem, and all manner of things, really. But that job became difficult when I had my son. It just became the hours and everything. So I took a career break actually at that time, and then I moved back into, after both children, moved back into corporate communications, and had a fairly senior role actually. And that was probably a moment worth mentioning for a woman, because I had a 5-year break. And at that point in time, during that 5-year break, there had been a lot of advances in people using computers. I'm telling my age now. People using computers and what have you. When I left 5 years before that, we were still looking up phone numbers in a phone directory.
Right.
That's how we were doing ours. And then all of a sudden it was like, crikey, I'm going to use a keyboard, and all this. So, and it's quite, you've got to just accept that there are going to be learning curves, and so that was a big one. And I really enjoyed that job. I worked with lots of chief executives and people at very senior level, working in the field of corporate social responsibility. And then after a while doing that, I decided to set up my own business in video production.
Right.
So I'd always kept a hand in. When I worked at Scottish Business in the Community, I'd done a corporate video for them and what have you. So I'd always kind of kept my hand in doing that type of thing. So set up a video production business, and that was really successful until 2008.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I remember that.
I think most of us remember that, and that particular business really it failed so fast because at the top level, corporate video at that time was still a fairly large expense, I mean, that was before people shot their corporate videos on their phones.
Right.
And
yeah.
So we lost our client overnight.
Yeah.
It was really, really terrifying. And I think I felt so demoralized by that. I felt so heartbroken. When you put your heart and soul into building a business, it's been very successful, and then external circumstances mean that it just goes. I thought, I'm tired of going into offices and meeting with senior marketing individuals and trying to persuade them that a corporate video is exactly what they need actually right now.
Right.
And so I had changed completely. And I thought, I'd always been strong at sports at school. And so I completely requalified as a personal trainer.
So that's a huge career change. Yeah.
Massive. Yeah. So I was 41 at that point. And I was the oldest in the group of about 15 of us that went through the training course. I was the only one that couldn't do a full press up, much to my horror. But there was just I had to have faith in myself. I had to believe in myself, because first I knew I actually wasn't physically as fit as I could be. I felt I had the potential to actually do the job. So again, I built up another business very successfully, and that took me through my youngsters' older years at school, where everything revolved around them, really. And then I made another massive change after I realised I had more freedom, I suppose.
Right.
And now I'm an estate agent, or a real estate agent.
Yeah, another big change.
Big
some of
change.
the properties you show are gorgeous. I mean, I've seen the photos. It's just beautiful, stunning. So you've been in an interesting position to see what's happened over the last year and a half with the pandemic and remote work, and I'm sure the experience in Scotland has been in some ways unique to Scotland, and probably some similarities with the US too. But how have you seen what's been going on with the pandemic and remote work impacting people and working in their homes and things like that?
I feel incredibly privileged in a sense, because I was never furloughed. I was never, I worked the whole way through. I was the only member of my Edinburgh team to continue working. And that meant that I have had contact with hundreds of people all the way through this. And I've seen the changes, and I've seen the impact that it's had. And, we all had a 3-month lockdown where we weren't allowed anywhere. And when we were first allowed back out, I would come across people sort of slouched over the end of their bed on laptop, and sort of joking about it, and this was very temporary. And as time went on, I would come across people who were incredibly isolated. They really didn't like the experience at all, and they wouldn't let me leave. I could have been the first.
Talk your ear off.
It's like, please don't go.
Exactly.
You're the first person that's been in my house for 6 months.
Wow.
So yes, and that was because, of course, we were one of the very few industries that were allowed to actually keep functioning pretty much as normal. So yes, some people find were finding it incredibly difficult in that sense. Others were loving it. They tended to be the people who live in locations like me, where you're in the countryside and you have that sense of freedom. Then others were feeling completely trapped, because they just had 4 walls and they didn't have, many places to get out and about outside. And people were missing the camaraderie, the teamwork of an office. I think Zoom, Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever was very quickly lost its appeal. I mean, what I found funny was speaking to people in their sort of tracksuits. At least they got out their pajamas. But speaking to people in their tracksuits and trainers, and then them telling me they're some highfalutin solicitors, and
It was,
It's
yeah,
just
that was a weird experience. Yeah, yeah.
just very incongruous, the whole thing. So, and then people started to get very creative because they then, it was this work situation was becoming a permanent one. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people who, one girl, she sort of divided her bedroom in half. And so
Hmm.
she put a big shelf and then she climbed up her ladders to go to bed and her workstation was underneath,
Oh,
you know.
interesting. That's kind of like college.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And I mean, I've had other people who are basically working in the cupboard,
Sure.
which,
Yeah.
you know, is not particularly healthy.
Right.
And people who have got nice sheds in the garden, and
Hmm.
but yes, it's been a very there there are pros and cons. There have been pros and cons because at the other side, it has shown us that it's entirely possible if people require flexibility for work.
Right.
Then,
Right.
I mean, I remember when I worked in the last sort of 9 to 5 corporate job that I had, I really, really, really got to the point where I could have done with it 1 day at home in the week.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I remember how much I fought for that. And they did give it to me eventually, and it was quite sort of pioneering at the time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then,
Yeah.
even though I had my 1 day at home, I actually hated it because I felt as though they didn't trust me. I felt as though that
Yeah.
I was just, at home having a wee jolly day off. And
Right.
yeah, yeah. And whereas I think now that they are, that's turned around because, well, I mean, if the work's not being done, the work's not being done.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, so on that side of it, it's enabled us probably to approach firms and say, look, this flexibility is going to help me as a person.
Right.
Um, the flip side of that is people are finding it incredibly difficult to disconnect. So
Yeah,
they
that's true.
they they have their computer and their desk sitting in the corner of the living room. So they're
Hmm.
not having that physical leaving the space where they're
Yeah.
working to the space where they have their dinner with their family and relax and watch TV or read a book. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
whole big mixing pot of things in there.
Yeah, it's I've heard of people doing some very creative things with that. One guy was talking about the fact I think he has his office in a room on a different level of the house. And so he will walk out the front door of his house just like he used to go to work. And he walks, down his driveway and goes around the house and comes in the bottom door and goes into his office. And people are kind of laughing. He said, I need this disconnection
Yeah,
between work and home to kind of get my mindset in the right place. And I'm lucky enough to have a separate room for my work too. And so I can kind of go in and close the door and focus. And then when I'm done, shut the door, go back upstairs and kind of have my life. And I think it's been hardest for people that don't have that, that
it,
have to
it
work in their home. Right.
it's critically important. I mean, when I ran my video production business, I started off just with an office upstairs in the bedroom,
Hmm.
and eventually got a sort of garden shed. And it was that simple.
Mm.
It was, I'm going to leave the house, walk across the garden, and into the
Right.
shed. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I,
And it
I mean,
helps.
it sounds,
Yeah.
it helps. Yeah, it helps. In the same way as people are having their Zoom meetings with their shirt and tie and their underpants.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just things are just
Yeah.
a wee bit surreal. Um,
I know. Yeah, it is a little weird. I used to keep a jacket. Yeah, I mean, my life's changed so much that I used to keep a jacket that I could put on and look
yeah,
professional. And it's like, forget it. It's
yeah.
like, no, I'm not going to keep doing that. But
No,
yeah, it
oh
has been
no.
very surreal. No, I think you're right. Is that we had to fight so hard to have work from home days, and that
Yeah,
was even rare. I'm trying to think when I joined eBay. This was in 2002. And we all worked really, really hard to say, can we at least have one work from home day just to focus? Because we had moved to the open kind of office model. We had cubes, but there were very low walls and people were sharing cubes even. And you just couldn't focus
yeah.
because people were constantly walking by and interrupting you and talking to you. And I think there's been a big um, awakening that people who thought that they were productive in the office discovered they weren't. So they've been at home and they've had to initially they weren't productive. And a lot of people talked about this too. It's like, oh, I'm distracted and I can't focus and I'm tempted to, go clean and do laundry and all this stuff. And then it settled in. And I think people found, okay, I can actually be productive and somebody's not walking by all the time and interrupting me. That's nice. I just got back to sometimes 3 or 4 hours of my day by not commuting because I
Yeah.
used to commute 2 to 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Bad days, it was 4 hours. It was horrible. Good day, fast day was 2 hours. Getting that back, I mean, incredible amount of time. So for me, it,
Mhm.
it enabled me to do things like exercise for the first time in a long time
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
commit
Yeah.
to that. Have you been seeing that too? Because you've had a foot in both worlds. I've been noticing that people are making use of this recovered time to reinvest in their health a little bit.
Hmm. Yes and no. I think
Okay.
um, initially, when everything was completely locked down, it was lovely. And I mean, my the street that runs behind me is a tiny little one track road, and it
Hmm.
became everybody was out doing their walks, and
Right.
it was really
Yeah.
nice. And we used to laugh because I shouldn't laugh, but we'd see these sort of 60-year-old men going by on bikes that they'd clearly dragged out the back of the shed. And
Yeah.
remember, one of them had actually taped it all together with gaffer tape, and the seats were all the, the
All
saddles were
rusty.
yeah, the saddles were like the wrong height, so the knees are coming up almost into the. I thought that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is wonderful.
That's
And I mean,
cool.
genuinely, you'd meet people who said, you'd be sort of halfway around the hill, and they'd say, we haven't walked up here in years. So
Wow.
that was
Yeah.
really lovely. But I think there's probably been a bit of I don't know what the divide is, but I think some people have gone one way and some people have gone the other
I think you're right.
because
Yeah. That's true.
I mean, I don't know. Over here, they've coined the phrase the COVID stone,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah,
Ours
yeah.
isn't quite
So
so clever, but yes.
yeah,
Yes.
so
There's definitely been
I
some
think
weight gain. Yeah.
definitely. So, and I mean, I'm not surprised about that because you've been at home, you're far more tempted to snack. You're
And they're
possibly,
stressed. Yeah. Yeah.
all these factors. So I'm not sure what as I say, the percentages of who's gone one way and who's gone
I
the
don't
other.
know either. That'd be an interesting study. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the overall stress of the situation is not helping matters at all.
Yeah. That's the one thing that even with the increased investment in health, and I think you're right. I think it's gone two ways. I think some people are stress eating and staying home
Yeah,
more than they used to. We've had an issue here where the national parks have had record numbers of people that have never been to these parks and camping. Like I live up close to the mountains here, and it's crazy. Like people that are going to the lakes and they're camping and they're skiing, people have never done this before. So it's like way more people. It's overrunning the parks. It's a big issue actually. I'm glad people are doing it, but we're not ready for it. But the one thing
uh,
that doesn't seem to have been addressed head on is the mental health issues and the emotional health issues. And I people keep talking about it, but I haven't seen a huge investment yet from employers and others saying, okay, we are recognizing that you're under a lot of stress. There's a lot of anxiety. We thought the pandemic would be over. The vaccine helped, but now with the variants, it's not. And so now people are like, uh-oh, we're going back into it again. And I just saw that like here in California, Los Angeles just put the mask order back into effect. So people are feeling this dread that just when we thought we were coming out of it, we may be going back into it. And I don't see enough of an effort to help people deal with this emotionally. And that's really unfortunate.
I emotionally or physically. I mean, I haven't seen any evidence of attempts to help people. It is a virus. I mean, obviously, it's a different virus, and it's a nasty virus, and it's working in ways that people still don't fully understand. But
Yeah.
ultimately, if your immune system is as as well as you can help it to be, you
Yeah.
are undoubtedly giving yourself a better chance. And
Oh, absolutely.
there
Yeah.
are the evidence that vitamin C and adequate vitamin D levels, I mean, that's now been pretty much there for months. I mean, it's not disputed. Plus, it's not going to do you any harm anyway.
Exactly. It's all good.
So it's all good anyway. But we're in the same position. I mean, July 19th, England certainly, not Scotland. We're always a bit behind. But that this is supposed to be our Freedom Day, as they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, our case numbers, not our hospital or death numbers, our case numbers are as high now as they were in January.
Yeah.
And I think that it causes so much division between people as well, because some people are absolutely terrified. Other people are losing their businesses, so they're crying out for things to open regardless. I mean, that you listen to interviews and things on the radio, and I mean, I had tears running down my face the other day listening to someone who works in the wedding industry, and he said, we are just on our knees here. And he said, he was actually talking about the mental health issues in that one industry, but I mean, that's one of many. And he said they're just in dire straits, really in dire straits.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate because I think we kind of did it by half measures, at least in the U.S. Because New Zealand was super aggressive. Like they closed down hard.
Yeah.
And then they reopened like in 2 months. I mean, they open and now their cases are, I don't even know if they have any cases. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And instead we kind of partially closed and we had it really bad in the US. The most cases and deaths. I lost a friend who died from it, which is really unfortunate. And now we just know we cannot economically keep doing this.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Temporarily, yes, but economically, it's disastrous. So I think we need to find a different way forward. A lot of the remote work stuff that we've been talking about, I've been trying to help people with businesses saying you need to diversify your income so that some of it doesn't have to be in the physical world, that you can do online kind of stuff and, online education and training and shift some of your resources to that, because I have a bad feeling this isn't going away anytime soon. And you're not going to survive. Your business won't survive this. And so you really have to get serious about it. It's not a temporary thing. You've got to really invest in it.
I absolutely agree. And, in terms of my work in property now, the mass exodus from the cities to rural areas is phenomenal.
There too? Yeah, we're having it here too. Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. A lot of people leaving San Francisco, for example. Not sure if the exodus from California is as big as they predicted. I think it's people moving around in California. So leaving the cities. I know that we've had an explosion in people moving into my area. So my friend's a real estate agent and he's had his busiest year ever. Houses are selling within a week, and going for $100,000 over asking. There was a home went for $1 million over asking. It's like, what? It's like insane. So all the rural areas are just blowing up.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I can't hold on to. I put one live at 8:30 in the evening last Wednesday. 24 viewers booked in by 10 the next morning. It was sold by midday.
Wow.
You cannot, and people are desperate. And the problem is we have so much more demand than supply that people are actually living in caravans now because they're selling their house so quickly. Then there's nothing to buy. They can't get their hands on anything. And of course, I'm very worried about where this is all heading, because if inflation starts rising as it is here, and then interest rates will start rising, and people who have paid over the odds, I mean, you know where I'm going with this. And so that's a sort of car crash waiting to happen as well. It's not great.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure when it's going to stabilize.
No, it's certainly not stabilizing here yet. But let's think of the positives, because I'm very glass half full, and we have to try to help people, think of the positives. And certainly in our if people are moving out into more rural areas, then working together more as communities, being more self-sustaining with food. I mean, our local village shop, for instance, it thrives through this because, it's pulled in a lot of local suppliers. We've got fabulous local vegetables that arrive every Monday, and, whatever fish, meat, whatever. And I feel that the way forward, is to just try to work together, maybe in slightly smaller communities.
Right. Yeah, we've been a part of it's community supported agriculture, CSA, and so we get a weekly delivery of local vegetables and fruits and all that. And I agree. I think both in terms of what's going on economically, and I think environmentally, and trying to reduce the carbon footprint of shipping in vegetables from a completely different country when you have farms like 20 miles away. And so I think it's creating a greater awareness, and I think it's forcing people to do things like buy local and to engage as a community. And I think, like you said, I think that's the good side. I think there's a silver lining. Sometimes you have to go through some really bad things to kind of realize what's important to you, and how to get together as a community, and how to invest in yourself and your local businesses. And I'm hoping that's the outcome of a lot of this, is that we do start to do more of that, and less relying on the big corporations, because they've been failing us. Um, and I have been seeing, I know in the US, I don't know if it's happening globally, but a lot of people are quitting their jobs this summer. So they've got fed up with the big corporate jobs, the big companies that didn't really look out for them as much as they had hoped during kind of the pandemic, and giving them the resources they needed. And now saying, okay, it's come back to the office. And they're like, really? I don't feel safe, for one. And I've realized how much I like my life without commuting to an office. And so people are quitting. Um, I've seen a renewed interest, because I do this business coaching, in people saying, okay, maybe it's time. It's time for me to figure out how to start my own business and to spin that up and be independent, much like you've done multiple times in your career, and make it work where I have more of that under my control. So I don't know if you're seeing as much of that there. Are you seeing people quitting jobs and looking for something that's a better fit for their new lifestyle?
I'm not, maybe you're in a position where you're going to be witnessing that. I'm just kind of doing my job, if that makes sense. So I'm not particularly
keeping busy.
Yeah. I'm just keeping my head down, keeping going. But what I do think is that it's possible to make. I mean, I've made 2 or 3 major switches, one at 40 and one at 50. And I, at the same time, I see people commenting often. I mean, regularly, people say, "Oh, but I'm nearly 40, 40. Oh, I couldn't do that now. Yeah, it's too late." And I think, that's it. You've only worked 20 years. You've probably got another 30 to go.
Exactly.
I mean, even me now at 50, I thought, I'm 15 years is guaranteed. But the way we're headed, I mean, even
I think it's going to be 20. Yeah.
I think it's going to be 20. And I want these 20. You want to look back and think, what have not necessarily what actual job I've done, but what skills have I accumulated? If they were 50, over 30 years, you have accumulated some skills without a shadow of a doubt. It might be that, people speak to someone like you, Larry, because often I find people can actually sound silly, but they're not terribly good at breaking these skills down.
True.
And then I mean, for me, training as an estate agent, which was actually quite quite a big deal, had to pass exams and all sorts of things. But I mean, I wasn't attracted to that because I love property. I'm not some, interior designer. I didn't want to be traipsing around lots of people's houses. I'm not nosy. But what I thought to myself was, look, everyone moving house is going through this really stressful experience. They need to be communicated with properly. That's all my background had been communication. And they need to be supported, they need reassured, they need to know you're going to be by their side. And these I recognize as attributes of mine. I've got plenty of failings, but these are strengths of mine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so therefore I applied these strengths to this job. And I think it's that switch around where you're 20, you're sort of not doing things that way. You're looking at, okay, I need to start building my skills up because I don't have many as a 20-year-old. And then you flip that round when you're older and say, actually, I've got plenty. I might need to speak to someone and get them to clarify what they are, but they're definitely there. And you'd be amazed what you can apply them to. And a year into it, I mean, my learning curve was so steep. It was, straight into a pandemic. I mean, I couldn't have done the time. Timing couldn't have been worse. So I think, if I survive that, then, so I think it's possible to change 40, 50, 60, 70. It's always possible to change. And I feel always so sad when I hear people, who are maybe 75, 80 or whatever, and just looking and regretting because they realise at that point that actually, whilst you start to think, gosh, I'm 50, I'm getting on a bit. When you're 80, a 50-year-old's young.
I know, it's a kid.
It's all perspective, isn't it? I mean, I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you because you run and you're fit, and you and Nicole, you're always, so you have plenty of energy. It's not. There's really nothing else to. There's no excuse. There's no excuse.
I agree. Yeah. No, I think you nailed it. What you said is exactly what I want more people to understand, is that they have a tremendous number of soft skills that they've developed over their entire lives that can be applied to anything. And I think when it comes down to almost anything you're doing, unless you're trying to be an airline pilot or a surgeon, which is there's a lot of hard skills you got to acquire. Most of the things you want to do, transitions to other careers and starting a business, it's a lot of the soft skills, and it's your willingness to learn and to adapt and to work with people. It's so much just about the relationships with the people. And so that is, I love your story, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show. And you kind of summed it up perfectly. It's like, it's never too late. There's always something you can do to apply what you have in your toolkit to do something, because we are going to be working for more years than we probably expect. And you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good.
Well, thank you, Fiona.
Lovely
so
to
much.
Speak to you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you would like to follow upcoming releases of the show, please subscribe. And as always, I appreciate your ratings and reviews. Thank you. If you would like to learn more about Invincible Career and the podcast, you can visit invinciblecareer.com. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming an opportunity magnet for the best things in life.